Well, let's go ahead and get started. I really want to thank all of you guys for all of your hard work this semester. This has been the strangest semester probably in the history of higher education. And we lost a lot of people along the way. A lot of people just stopped showing up after we switched the class to an online format. But you guys stuck with the class. I've seen how hard you've worked. I've seen the effort you've put into your papers. Philosophy is just hard. You know, it's not like learning biology or learning math where you just have to learn a discrete set of things and you get a very measurable quantitative set of skills that you can do, a set of knowledge that you know, and then you move on. I think you can see in the course of this semester that philosophy is inherently open-ended that way. You know, in doing philosophy, you're participating in a thousands of year old conversation across generations, across cultures, across time periods. You're directly engaging in conversation with these great philosophers about questions that are inherently open-ended, about questions that we still to this day don't have adequate answers to. And that is some of the inspiring but frustrating part of doing philosophy. And I think it really takes a special, unique kind of thinker to embrace that. I think in our performative, quantitative, data-driven age that we live in, the open-endedness of philosophy does not resonate with everyone. If it ever really did, maybe it never really did. But I just kudos to you guys for sticking with the class and the things that are frustrating inherently about doing philosophy and all of the unknowns we've had to deal with, switching the class to an online format. And I hope you feel like you've progressed as thinkers and writers in the course of the semester. I really think, you know, writing is a lifelong journey. It's very easy to kind of expect yourself to be an A student and expect yourself to perform adequately and write awesome papers. But, you know, from my point of view, you guys are undergraduates. You know, you're at a community college. You haven't gone to a university yet. You haven't gone to graduate school yet. You haven't, you know, started your careers yet that you're going to have 10 years from now. And if you continue being a thinker and a writer, like I have, you know, I think you'll see that the things you write now are embarrassing. You'll look back at them in 10 years or 20 years or 30 years, and you'll be embarrassed by the things you wrote in this class. Because you have a long way to go as thinkers and writers still. I look back at some of the papers I wrote in my intro to philosophy class that I took when I was in your position, and they're laughable. I mean, they were good in some ways. They were like the seeds of genuine philosophical thought and philosophical writing. I had a long way to go as a writer, either from a grammar standpoint or from a critical thinking standpoint. And that's a lifelong process. And even for me today, you know, I'll be 42 years old this year. And I feel like in 20 years, the things I write today will be kind of embarrassing. I still have a long way to go as a writer. So give yourself some slack and some credit on your own writing. I think if you're reflective about your writing at all, you'll realize, hey, this is pretty good, but it's still kind of like intro level. You know, you've got a long way to go. And I don't have any pretenses that a lot of you will actually study philosophy. You know, for me, it was a turning point. I was gonna, when I started in college, I was gonna be a math teacher, and then I switched my major to physics briefly. And then when I took my first philosophy class, that was it. It was the thing I found most fascinating, most interesting, because I found that it was asking these deeper questions that in some way I had always been asking inside. And there was a whole discipline about that. I didn't realize at the time that it was going to be the hard career path that it is, but I just ran with it. You know, before I knew it, I went off to university and I had to decide what to major in. I checked the philosophy box and off I went, taking my philosophy classes, got a degree. And before I knew it, I was applying to grad schools in philosophy. And then before I knew it, I was the teacher, you know, and I taught my first philosophy class it was 16 years ago was when I taught my very first philosophy class of my own. I'd been a teaching assistant before that for other professors. But that's when I taught my very first philosophy class at the community college. And then I found myself lecturing at UC Santa Cruz in California. And then I did that for a few years, but I think I might have mentioned this at the beginning of the semester, but this has been a special year for me because I taught philosophy over 10 years ago at the community colleges. I taught for about five years. And then I switched careers. I switched careers to educational publishing and content development and creating online products for publishing companies, even in philosophy. And then when I moved to Idaho Falls, I found I was near a community college, and I had this idea, maybe I could teach philosophy again. It had been a long time, over 10 years since I'd taught a philosophy class. And You know, I changed a lot as a writer and as a thinker and as a teacher. I think, teaching has always come kind of intuitively to me. And, but I was really worried that it had been so long since I'd been in the classroom. Maybe I'd never have a chance to teach another philosophy class again, even given that I'm pretty good at it. I think I bring a lot to the table that other philosophy teachers don't bring. And then before I knew it, I was back in the classroom at College of Eastern Idaho, teaching the students I taught last semester and teaching all of you. And it was a really special experience for me to be able to do it. And the future's uncertain. I think I mentioned, but I lost my instructional designer job as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. I'm on the job search. I don't know if I'll be teaching it next semester or not. I'm slated to teach, but I don't know if that's actually going to happen. And for me, it was such an inspiring thing to be able to do. I was the shy kid in class growing up. I was the quiet one who sat in the back and didn't say anything to anyone. And the first time I was in my own classroom, I was amazed at just how easy it was to be in front of the classroom and enjoy the theatrical aspects of teaching and enjoy seeing the light bulb go on over people's heads when an idea really clicks with students. I see that in you guys. I've seen it in every class I've ever taught. And it's why I keep showing up. It's why it's what I teach for. I teach to those aha moments. But, for me, it hasn't been my main career path. I've always had another career that frankly pays better. And, there's always the chance that this will be the last time I'll teach a class because, I'm going to move on and try to find the next full-time job. And I don't know if I'll be teaching again or not. I really don't know. So it's a special experience for me. I just wanted to convey how special it was for me to be able to be here with you guys, to teach you guys. It wasn't something I had planned to do, 2 or 3 years ago. I never would have anticipated this. And here we are having a philosophy class together after all those years of not being in the classroom. So from my point of view, personally, I just want to say thank you to all of you for your hard work, for showing up, for having a good attitude, for being open to learning all the things that you learn about, to be, really engaging with the material. And just, I hope you got something out of it. I think for me, like I said, I don't expect any of you guys to study philosophy. Maybe one or two of you will, I don't know. But if you do, that's awesome. I'm happy to have played a part in it. But if you don't, I hope you take philosophy with you for the rest of your lives, because it's so easy to get dragged down into the things that are practical and performative and necessary in life. We all have to pay the bills. We all need to worry about our careers. We all have, families and friends and commitments and, just the minutia of things you have to get through from day to day to day. And if you spend all your time on those, there's the danger that you really waste your entire life away not being fully human, not living up to your fully human potential. And I believe this with all my heart, that philosophy is part of reaching your full human potential. Part of the kind of beings we are. As Aristotle said, we're rational animals. We have the ability to look introspectively at our own lives and at the world around us and ask these deeper questions about the nature of reality and the nature of ourselves and our place in the world and our relation to everything in reality. We seem to comprehend all of it in ways that other species don't. And, either that's frustrating because of all the unknowns, or it should be really inspiring, and it should be something you take with you your entire life. I hope all of you guys become readers and writers and thinkers, no matter what you do for a job, no matter how you spend your time, no matter, what relationships you're in, or what family issues you've got, what things you have to deal with for the next 50 years. I hope you take your intellectual life with you, continue to read and write, continue to think about the hard questions in life, continue to use your rational faculties to the best of their ability. It's a special gift that we have that other species don't seem to have. And that should be a little inspiring. Otherwise, you really can live a very practical life. And I know people like this. They've lived an incredibly practical life. They've never really challenged themselves. They've never really thought about any of the hard questions. They don't get inspired by very much. They pay the bills and show up to work and do their hobbies or do their whatever. But, they've lived a very practical life. And for me, there's something inherently lacking about that. So I just hope I've inspired all of you guys to find ways to incorporate these uniquely human qualities into your life. If you don't remember anything at all about what Plato said or what Aristotle said or Descartes said 10 years from now, I can live with that as long as you continue to live a rich intellectual life, and hopefully as readers and writers and thinkers. For me, writing has taken many forms. It's been writing I've done for work. It's been, it's been poetry. It's been writing blog posts. I've dabbled all over the place in my writing, and it's all very personal, but it's also very philosophical. I'm interested in everything. And I think if you really have a philosophical spirit about you, you should be interested in everything, right? I mean, you see all the different topics we've dabbled in the course of a single semester, reality and science and ethics and, all over the place. And I think if you don't have that innate curiosity about everything, it's going to be hard to live a philosophical life. I think that innate curiosity is something I hope I've cultivated in you. And it's something I'm a little disturbed about. I think I see a lot of students, again, not you guys, but over the course of my teaching career, I've seen a lot of students who are not innately curious. They frankly don't care about all of the unknowns. And for me, it's, like I maybe tried to explain a little bit last time, we live in a fairly magical universe. Here we are, we're conscious in the middle of all these, physical objects around us that aren't conscious. There's a kind of enchantment to that I find magical and, not mystical in a corny sense, but, mystical in some way. It's mysterious that we're here at all. And, there's so many interesting things in the world to learn about. There's so many interesting unknowns, problems to be solved, things yet to be discovered. There's this grandeur to the course of human history. And here we are, it's our moment in the sun. Do something with it. Don't just waste your whole life not engaging with the world, not engaging with it intellectually or emotionally or, romantically, in the sense of like 19th century romanticism. So I just hope I've inspired you guys to carry all of this with you into your lives, no matter what you do. I really hope I hear from all of you guys in 20 or 30 years saying that you did awesome things, better things than I was ever able to do and ever able to accomplish, and that I played even the tiniest part in your success later in life. The few students in my previous teaching career before I came back to the classroom that I keep in touch with make it all worth it. Every low paycheck from teaching, every stressful moment in the classroom, every stressful part about getting the grades submitted on time, all of the minutia of teaching that's really annoying. I like the in-classroom part, but all the stuff about teaching I find really annoying. But those students who are doing amazing things, and I had a chance to play a little part in shaping who they became, makes it totally worth it from my point of view. So I hope I've played even a little part in the people you will become, and I hope you do amazing things, and frankly, better, more amazing things than even I was able to do. So I do have something prepared for today, and I'm going to share my screen, so give me just a moment. Okay. Okay, can you guys see my screen okay?
Yep.
Okay, give me just a minute to reconfigure here. There we go. So I have today what I have called the world according to Zach. I was thinking, how do I go about summing up everything we've done this semester and also giving you guys some practical advice for living? And this is something that I feel strongly about. If you don't walk away from this class with some sort of practical takeaways, I feel like I haven't done my job, right? I mean, yes, you should learn about philosophy. Yes, you should learn about all these, abstract intellectual issues that are inherently interesting in themselves. But really, you need to be thinkers and writers and successful in the world. You need to walk away with some practical advice for living. I think this is something I didn't used to appreciate about philosophy. I really used to think of philosophy as something super highly abstract, these philosophical questions that are inherently interesting in themselves. And I still feel that about a lot of philosophical issues. They're inherently interesting, even the highly abstract ones about the nature of knowledge or the nature of reality. I find them inherently interesting. But we do have to function in the world. And as I've gotten older and have gone through more things and have had to deal with more things and overcome many challenges in life, I find that the practical wisdom that I get from Stoic philosophers, or even, nuggets of wisdom I've got from family members or friends, has helped me get through the world. And I view that now as just as philosophical as these highly abstract questions. So I wanted to give you guys, some combination of summing up everything we did in the class and some practical advice from me and a few others, the philosophers that we've talked about over the course of the semester, and frankly, some family and friends that, from whom I've picked up nuggets of wisdom over the years. And I just called it The World According to Zach, which is a little simplistic and corny, but I hope you enjoy it. So let's dive in. There are a lot of slides here. They're like 80 slides. I'm just going to go through these really quickly and give my quick thoughts on these. And I started out by trying to stick narrowly to the philosophers that we covered in the course of the semester, but I very quickly found myself deviating and weaving in a bunch of other stuff. So here, I would call this The World According to Zach version 1. There's a lot more stuff I'd want to include if I had more time to work on this still, but here we go. So from Plato, right off the bat, don't live in a cave of ignorance. I think we all do this sometimes, right? It's very easy to stick in your comfort zone. It's very easy to stick to what's familiar, what you know. But a lot of the times that can be like staring at shadows on the wall inside Plato's cave, in the allegory of the cave. It's really hard to crawl your way out of your comfort zone or crawl your way out of the world as you understand it to see things a different way. And of course, Plato would describe that in terms of enlightenment and in terms of, using your intellect abstractly. But I think, you can broaden the metaphor and say, in some sense, all of us live in our own comfort zone, live in our own caves, a cave of ignorance or a cave of comfort. And either someone has to drag you kicking or screaming out of it, like the philosopher who runs back into the cave to drag people out of it, or you've got to crawl your way on your own. And I think my experience a lot of the time has been I'm crawling my way out of my own cave of ignorance, struggling to see things in a different way, or struggling to overcome some sort of barrier, or struggling to get outside my comfort zone. But it's important to do, otherwise you can live your entire life inside a cave of ignorance. From Aristotle, Aristotle says to cultivate virtues, good habits, and squash your vices. We all have virtues, good character traits, and good habits. And of course, remember, for Aristotle, that's a matter of living in the middle ground, not being too extreme, not being too courageous or having too little courage, staying somewhere in the middle. But for Aristotle, that means cultivating good habits. So look at your lives, figure out what habits are the good, productive habits, and really try to cultivate those. And that takes time. This is my grandmother's advice for habit formation. She was a piano teacher, and she would have to train me out of all the bad habits for playing piano. And she'd have to help me instill good habits through regular practice. Figure out what you need to do to live your best life, what habits you need to be cultivating, and really form those habits. But that's something that takes time. You have to make yourself do it. It takes training. It takes mentoring. It takes reinforcement. And also squash your vices. We all have bad habits and things that hold us back in life, either from living our best lives or that are just outright not virtuous. Really try to squash your vices. This is as much for me as it is for you guys. I've got my virtues and I've got my vices. You've got your virtues and you've got your vices. But do what it takes to form good habits, cultivating good virtues in yourself, good character traits, good habits of action, and try to squash or weed out the bad habits that you have that lead to living not the best life that you could live. Good advice from Aristotle, I think. From Marcus Aurelius, focus on the things you can control and let go of the things you can't. This has been a hard lesson for me to learn. I'm an idealist in a lot of ways. I think you can see that from my personality in class, and there's a lot that's outside your control, things you just can't do anything about. Things in the world politically, things in your own life, things in your community, things inside you even. There's a lot of things you can't control, but there's a lot of things you can control. And if you want to live a sane, happy, productive life, focus on the things you can control and really try not to worry about the things you can't control. If you spend your time worrying about the things you can't control, that's going to hold you back from worrying about the things you can control and keep you from making progress in the ways you can make progress. Again, either individually, in your own lives and community, and out in the world. Good advice from Marcus Aurelius. From Thomas Aquinas, this one's a little abstract, but contemplate the origin of the cosmos. It's a mystery that we're here. Why does the universe exist at all? Why was there a Big Bang? Why did the cosmos exist? Why is there anything at all instead of nothing? What is the origin of all of it? It should be a mystery, either about the nature of human life or about the cosmos as a whole. But spend some time in awe and trying to understand the mystery of existence. Why any of us? Why anything at all exists? And Thomas Aquinas, I think, raises that issue more than almost any other philosopher in his attempt to explain the origin of everything with this cosmological argument. But this is worthwhile on its own, right? Yes, there's an intellectual problem trying to understand the origin of things, but for me, there's a sense of mystery to the origin of things. Why is there anything at all? The universe doesn't have to exist. It didn't have to exist, right? Presumably, some accidental thing happened to make it exist, or it was intentional by a designer, depending on which way you go philosophically with it. But it should be mysterious and worth thinking about, both intellectually and in terms of reverence and awe for creation. There's some inherent mystery to why we're all here. And I think if you don't spend a little time dwelling on the mystery and the awe of it, I think you miss something about human life. That's the kind of thing that we can contemplate that other animals don't seem to be able to contemplate. From Descartes, I didn't quite know how to put this, but light a candle, turn down the lights, and surprise yourself with what you can accomplish with the power of your own mind. Think of how Descartes did philosophy, sitting there by candlelight, writing his meditations. Our minds, our ability to comprehend purely with our own reason is amazingly powerful. I don't mean this kind of mystically, like, oh, look at the things you can cause with your own mind. I mean, think of the things you can understand and figure out with your own mind. Descartes, figured out a lot about the nature of reality purely using his own mind. And of course, you can make a plan. If you've got a problem, if you have somewhere you want to be, you can sit down and, sit there by candlelight, pull out a piece of paper and make a plan, and you can figure it out. We have this amazing ability to figure stuff out with our own minds and use it. If you feel like you're stuck, if you feel like there's somewhere you want to be and you don't see how to get from A to B, if there's something you want to accomplish, if there's a problem that you think needs solving, sit down and make a plan and use your mind and figure it out. You really do have the ability to do that. And it's very easy to feel stuck and constrained by those things. So, really brute force your way out of it with your own mind. You're rational beings. Use your rational faculties to their full power. David Hume, be skeptical. I think people have pointed this out to me, but I'm a skeptic about everything right off the bat. My initial reaction to almost everything is, well, I don't know. Let me think about that. Let me see. Let me analyze that. I'll take this kind of negative skeptical position to it. Largely, that served me well because you don't get hoodwinked, right? You don't get taken advantage of that way. But be skeptical about everything. Everything you learn in college, everything you think you understand, your entire worldview, all the things you take for granted. Try to adopt this position of skepticism, because that's what it means to be critical, right? That's what it means to be critical thinkers. It means to not just take things at face value, but look at it from every angle. Is that really right? What are other ways to look at it? What are other ways of living? What are other ways I could be? What are other ways of shaping the world around us that we could do? Be skeptical of everything that's handed to you. And we're handed a lot. We're handed a lot by our country, by our communities, by our family, by our religions, by history. And all of that is stuff you should be skeptical about, because from my point of view, I'm kind of a futurist. The world doesn't have to be that way. We can shape the world any way we want it to be. If we don't like the way things are politically, we could build a better society. You don't like the way your relationships go, fix it. Find a better way to do it. If you don't like the path of your life, if you don't like the things you were handed culturally or with your religion or from your family or from your friends, you can change those things, but it all starts by being skeptical about them, not just taking them as face value, not by taking them as necessary and given facts about how the world is. We have a lot more control over the way life can be than we think we do, but it all starts with being skeptical about the things we've received from others. And of course, you don't want to be hoodwinked, or taken advantage of. From Kant, be aware of the ways in which you're constructing your own reality. Now, Kant means something a little different from this, right? Kant means, when Kant talks about constructing our reality, he talks about it being objective, using our necessary rational faculties, and that produces this objective world of experience. So I've kind of broadened and made Kant a little more subjective here, but really, we all construct our own reality. We have so many assumptions and, parts of our worldview that we haven't been critical about, and we project those outward into the world that we experience. And we think that they're inherent parts of the world, but really, I think if you take the time to analyze your own worldview, you find that it's you and your own worldview and your own assumptions being projected outward on the world. And a lot of it is actually coming from you. So things you find frustrating, or things that things you see that are dissatisfying in the world, see how much you're actually reading into things and how much you're kind of constructing the world you experience based on what you're bringing to the table versus looking at the world more objectively. So that's Kant. Be aware of the ways you're constructing your own reality. And of course, Kant means something a little more objective than I did there. Nietzsche. And, as I get older, I find this more and more inspiring. You probably gathered by now that I've become a bit of a Nietzsche disciple over over the last couple of years. Be an individual. Don't be like the herd. It's so easy to follow the crowd. It's easy to be like everyone in your society. It's easy to follow the path. It's easy to stick to the parts of our worldview that we take for granted. And of course, Nietzsche would mean things like Judeo-Christian morality, but he would also mean, look at all of you. Me too, right? I'm here, at a community college with all of the politics that go along with being in public education, and you guys are part of the education system, and it's all very herd-like, right? And there's a kind of uninspired way of just kind of going through the motions, doing the things you need to do, checking things off the list so you can get a job like everyone else, so you can live the same kind of life as everyone else, so you can retire like everyone else. And there's something inherently dissatisfying about that, as I just described it, right? Find a way to make your life your own. Don't live other people's lives. I think Nietzsche would describe this as being the creator of your own life story. Think about the best life you can live, whatever that means for you. And I guess my point is that's going to mean something different for all of you, right? That could mean traveling. It could be creating something. It could be relationships. It could be politics. It could be whatever it means to you. Don't be like everyone else. Find your own best life and make that for yourself. Write your own life story. Otherwise, what will happen is that you'll find your entire life is being written by other people. Your family will say, here's the path you need to be on, or your school, or even your school counselors, your other professors will say, here's what you need to do, and here's the kind of life you should live, and here's what we expect from people in sort of normal society. And your whole life could be shaped by these external factors, and it can be really inauthentic. So figure out what your best life is for you, and then become the artistic creator of your own life story. Go out and live your best life. If you really want to follow the typical path to get a college degree so you can accomplish something particular, and that's truly authentic to you, do it. That can be part of living your own life story. But don't do it purely because other people want you to. Don't do it because that's the norm or the expectation. And same thing with all our sort of cultural and ethical and religious and societal values. If those are really authentic to you and you've thought about them critically and they really resonate with you, that's awesome, right? That's who you are. But if you find that those contradict who you are, don't let them constrain you into living a life that's not truly your own. So write your own life story. Be the author of your own story. And most importantly, be an individual. Don't try to be like me. Don't try to be like your other professors. Don't try to be like your family members. Don't try to be like people, even people you idolize, right? Be yourself. Take nuggets of wisdom as you encounter them, but be yourself, and then do the things you really want to do. But if you find your life being shaped by other people, that should be a huge red flag from a Nietzschean standpoint. From Foucault, be aware of the hidden power relationships surrounding you. And there are many, right? Every institution you're going to be a part of, even an educational institution like this, there's a huge political network around you. The politics of the institution, from the college president and the deans on downward, politics amongst the instructors, even amongst yourselves, politics amongst students, sort of vying for favor with each other. And there's this huge network of power relationships. And especially in society, right? When you actually broaden the field a little bit, and from institution to institution, from government to government, top down, bottom up, sideways, there's power relationships everywhere. And if you're ignorant of those, again, your life is going to be steered by forces outside of your control. We didn't cover Machiavelli in the class because Machiavelli he's a political philosopher, but I kind of put him on the fringe of philosophy. But Machiavelli would say, and use those power relationships to your advantage. Once you understand that most of the world is being shaped by power relationships, I think you'll find you can actually use those power relationships to your advantage to achieve the things you want to achieve. Even something, this is just a simple example, but like my job search that I'm doing right now, undoubtedly, the reason I'm going to get my next job is because I know someone who knows someone, and they're in a position of power to make the decision about who gets hired. It has very little to do with my actual qualifications. It has to do with who you know and the power relationships. And once that clicks, you'll realize, oh, I can actually kind of game the political system. Like when you apply to college, when you apply to grad school, when you're trying to find a job, the most important thing you can do is get to know someone at those institutions. When you're applying to college, write to the people, the professors at the department that you want to go to. Write to the admissions counselors. Write to the people who are making the decision. Same thing when you apply to grad school. When you apply for a job, don't just apply for the job. Get to know the people who are already there. Right? If you do those things, you're in like Flynn because they know you already. But again, that all has to do with using power relationships to your advantage. And it's very easy to think, oh, I can just kind of get where I want to be by focusing on myself and focusing on qualifications. But you don't realize that there's an entire invisible network of power relationships dictating your fate at this very moment. And once you become aware of those, you can actually be much more in control of your own lives. So try to become aware of those things and then use them to your advantage, not in this, capricious, malicious sense, but in a positive sense to build good relationships and use power relationships to achieve the things you want to achieve. Wittgenstein. Learn to play the language games you're already in and create new ones. Remember, Wittgenstein had to say that we actually kind of move in and out of this network of different language games, different cultural contexts, different spheres, different practices, both linguistically and in terms of the activities and practices that we do. And you have to learn to master those, right? If you want to be a good student, you have to learn the student game. If you want to be a good professor like me, you've got to learn the professor game. If you want to be a good fill in the blank, you've got to learn how that game functions. So learn to play the language games you're already in and the ones you want to be in, but create new ones too. I think Wittgenstein says that these language games change, and fluctuate over time. I mean, look at all the new practices and new ways of working. I mean, the fact that we're having an online class is an amazing example, right? A class like this would have been unintelligible 20 years ago. Imagine staring at a screen, basically having a philosophy class through a computer. 20 years ago, that was science fiction. And here we are doing it. And all of these practices have evolved. So there's lots of room to create new language games and move. Again, for me, it's a matter of moving humanity forward, right? There's a trajectory to those things. There's some sort of progressive element to it, not for Wittgenstein, but for me. So, figure out where there's opportunity to create a new way of doing things and do things that way if that's a real opportunity. It could be a business opportunity, but it could be a matter of creativity in your own lives. But don't just take, the way of doing things for granted. Push the boundaries and find new ways of doing things. Heidegger. There's a lot I could say about Heidegger, but this is the one I centered on. Throw yourself into a project you care about with all your being. It's so easy to be inauthentic and have jobs that don't really resonate with us, or study things that don't really resonate with us, or if you find yourself spending time on things you don't really care about so much. But find something that really does resonate with you, some project, some goal, some challenge, something you want to accomplish, something you want to work on, something that gives you satisfaction, and throw yourself into that with all your being. Because from Heidegger's standpoint, and from the standpoint of lots of other existentialists like Camus, for example, that's what gives life meaning. If you don't do the things you care about, the things that really resonate with you, you can live a really inauthentic life. So figure out what that means for you. It could be a hobby, it could be something you study, it could be a career, it could be your family, it could be whatever it is. Find something that really resonates with you and just throw yourself into it. I think you'll find you live a happier life when you do that. Camus, this sounds really dark, but I don't mean it to be dark. Contemplate suicide. Don't actually do suicide. Don't tell anyone your philosophy professor said to commit suicide. But think about it, because Camus raises this really interesting that maybe life is meaningless. Maybe all of these things we do, all of our practices, all of our hobbies, all the things that get us through the day are like Sisyphus pushing a rock uphill, and at the end of the day, from the objective third-person standpoint, it's meaningless. And maybe that's a reason to commit suicide. Maybe life really isn't worth living in that standpoint. But I think at the end of the day, Camus basically says Sisyphus is happy. You know, at some point he has to say, okay, my lot in life is to push my rock up the hill. And even if it's meaningless, even if I do the same thing day in, day out, I can put a smile on and I can wake up every day and I can throw myself into it and I can find meaning in it and I can live a happy life, even if you're just pushing the same rock uphill every day. So I guess my point is try to find the things that give your life meaning. It's related to the last slide, but find the hobbies or the projects or the challenges or the goals that really resonate with you. Could be intellectually, it could be in terms of hobbies, could be spending time with your family, could be achieving something. Again, I'm really open about this. Find the things that really resonate with you as an individual from a Nietzschean standpoint and find meaning in those. And then really think, is this really how I want to be spending my life? Is this a life that's worth living? And if you're ever at a point in life when you end up saying, I don't think life is worth living, probably you need to make a change. You're probably not spending time the way you want to spend time. You're not in the environment you want to be in. You're not with the people you want to be with. And if you ever catch yourself thinking that life isn't worth living, you probably need to make a change. But it all has to do, I think, with Camus' view that it has to do with this fundamental question: is life worth living or not? Should we just commit suicide or not? If you ever catch yourself finding life not being meaningful, make whatever changes are necessary. But it all starts with recognizing that maybe you're not living your best life. You're not living a meaningful life today. From Jean-Paul Sartre, remember your own power to choose. It's so easy to live a life of excuses, saying, oh, I'm stuck because of this thing, or I can't do anything about this, or that's just how I am, or that's just how other people are. And at every turn, Sartre would say, you have the power to choose. You have radical free will to decide how to live your life. You can make a radical decision to do something different, to make a big change, to go left. Anytime you catch yourself feeling stuck, Sartre would say, no, you really have the power to choose. Doesn't mean that there's no external constraints, but you can choose how you relate to those, and you can always make some sort of decision. At very least, you can also always commit suicide, or you can always end it, but you always have the power to choose to do something different than you're doing. And anytime you catch yourself saying, that's just how things are, that's just how I am, that's how other people are, that's how the world is, Sartre would call that bad faith. That's being inauthentic and not recognize your own power to do something about it. So always remember your own free will and your power to choose. But it's so easy to start living a life of excuses. And I catch myself doing it. I catch other people doing it. We all do it sometimes. But, the more you pay attention to that, the more control over your own life that you'll end up having. Another piece of advice from Kant: keep your objectivity. It's so easy to see things subjectively from your own standpoint, from your own perspective, from your own worldview, not being able to understand the worldview or the perspective of other people, not being able to step back and look at a situation objectively from the third person standpoint. So everything I just said about subjectivity and authenticity, I think that should be paired with trying to keep your objectivity, trying not to let your own uniqueness and your own perspective interfere with being able to step back and look at a situation objectively. So try to keep your objectivity no matter what situation you're in as well. A little nugget from John Stuart Mill: focus on the greater good. You can focus on your own happiness so much to the exclusion of the world at large, right? Do good for other people. Try to minimize pain and suffering and try to maximize happiness and pleasure and good outcomes for the greatest number of people out there. And if you don't focus on the greater good, you're living a very narrow life that is fundamentally kind of selfish and inwardly focused, right? Focus on the greater good. Could be the greater good for your family, it could be the greater good for your community, it could be the world at large, but focus on the greater good, not some higher good besides your own little life, which is minuscule and insignificant in some ways, right? In 50 years, 100 years, we'll all be dead. In 60 years, I'll be dead. But, we can focus on our own lives so much to the exclusion of the greater good. And if you don't step back and say, hey, there's a big world out there with a lot of problems and a lot of people who are suffering, you can do something about it. As a teacher, I try to educate people and hope that filters into the world. People who do charity, or, they join the Peace Corps, or they're trying to solve some problem in medicine. They're focusing on the greater good. Find some way to make a contribution to the world as a whole and do that. I think that will give your life more meaning. From Jean-Francois Lyotard, be skeptical of grand meta-narratives and don't be taken in by them. You know, we've all been told a story about our place in the world, right? Either in our country or our society or in our religion, or in terms of the history of the world and the trajectory of world history. Politically, we're being told narratives all the time. You know, Republicans have this story about, you know, what things, how we should be doing things and our place in the world. And Democrats have a slightly different view on our place in the world and how the world looks politically. And you can call those grand meta-narratives, these grand narratives that sort of frame our place in the world in relation to other people and the history of the world in general. And a lot of those are tied up with power relationships, right? So, and you can be taken in by those. You know, if you look at those uncritically, you can be caught up in a wave of one of those narratives, living a religious life that other people have said you should live, or living a political life that other people have said you should live, living and holding certain values because you've been told that that's the story of humanity and that's where we fit in the big picture. So be skeptical of all of those. You know, on the other hand, he's saying we all live a life of narrative. We all tell stories about ourselves, and we saw this last time when we looked at postmodern religion and postmodern science, that really we can't avoid narrative. You know, we're storytellers fundamentally as humans, but be skeptical of the grand narratives about your place in the world or your place in society or your place in history or your place in religion that come externally from other people, because a lot of times they're tied up with power relationships and really they can be manipulative rather than for your own benefit. So be skeptical of those things. And definitely don't be taken in by them. From Baudrillard, expose the artificial and the things you take for granted as reality. I think we live in a really interesting time nowadays where it's really hard to distinguish which aspects of our lives are genuine and authentic and quote unquote real, and which are tied up with inauthenticity or simulation. You know, I mean, the mere fact that we're having a philosophy class online through a computer should make this point, right? There's a simulated quality to a lot of the aspects of our experience in terms of the media we consume, in terms of and especially in terms of our social structures. You know, look at how much of our lives are filtered through social media these days, right? That's all a kind of artificial construct that has become indistinguishable from reality. That's the life that we live. So try to see which parts of your lives are genuinely authentic and quote unquote real, and try to figure out which parts of your lives are constructed and inauthentic and artificial. And because they're so intertwined these days in this, you know, in these postmodern technological 21st century times that we live in, you can take the artificial for granted as reality if you're not careful. And I think what that does is it prevents you from seeing that they're changeable, right? All those things that are artificial constructs are changeable. They're not necessary. They don't have to be that way. But if we take them for granted as reality, then we're going to forget that we really have the power to change those things. We don't have to live our lives that way. Next slide. And so I'm kind of deviating from the course of the class now. In terms of bringing in other nuggets of wisdom from myself or from other people. Find the weak points and inconsistencies in your own worldview and try to reconcile them. I think I tried to make this point when we were talking about science and religion. You know, we live a complex life. We have certain values that have been handed to us. We have certain beliefs about the natural world that come from science. We have certain beliefs about metaphysics or God or each other or society that come from religion, and they don't always match up with each other. And so if a good goal is to have a coherent worldview, you constantly need to be saying which parts of my worldview are coherent and which parts don't actually fit together. You know, there's something that's purely intellectual about this, of course, right? If you're interested in science and religion, you're, oh, okay, these don't match up. If you want to make them match up, there's some genuine intellectual work to do, genuine scientific work, genuine theological work, or ethical work maybe. And some people don't worry about this, right? They just go, oh, you know, different domains, or I don't really care, and I'm just going to, you know, focus on the practical. But again, I think there's some value in trying to live the most coherent life possible. And if there are parts of your life, things you believe that contradict each other, try to reconcile them, constructively build a worldview that is coherent by trying to reconcile these anomalies in your worldview that don't make sense, rather than just dismissing them or ignoring them, which I'd say the masses do. Most people actually function at that level. They just don't pay attention to it. They don't worry about it, or they just say, you know, that's just one part of my life, and I do this other thing is this other part of my life, and they're not coherent. I think that's a really bifurcated life. And if you want to live a coherent life, the only way to do that is to focus on the parts of your life that are incoherent. And that's, that's something, I think that has to do with intellectual honesty as well, right? That has to do with being consistent about your own life or consistent about your worldview. And if consistency is a value that you have intellectually, avoiding contradictions in your life or in your worldview, that's part of being intellectually honest, is being self-critical about the parts of your worldview that don't yet make sense or don't add up with each other. I almost didn't include this slide, but I still think it's important. Think about human nature and the purpose of government. It's very easy to take for granted that, yeah, we have a government and there needs to be a government. And yeah, the government needs to operate a certain way because of these values that we have. And a lot of that was received historically and culturally, maybe religiously even. But think about what the purpose of government should be, and then ask yourself, is government really functioning that way? And if not, try to change the world. This should resonate a little bit with all of us Americans, right? All of us are here because, a couple hundred years ago, our, founding fathers of this country had the courage to say, we think there's a better way of doing government than what's been done in the entire history of the world that came before. And I guess my point is that at any point in human history, we can always say, is this really what government should be doing? And if not, we've got the power to change it because we're the ones that government should be working for. And if that's not the case, try to do something about it. Don't just take it passively, but realize that we have political power to shape the world. And that's been done in the past, and we're reaping the benefits of that to this day. But that process isn't over. And I think we can always say, is government really doing what it needs to be doing? And if not, try to change it. Again, Thoreau is something I didn't used to teach, but it's something that's resonated with me more and more as I get older. My nugget from Thoreau is seek out some sort of transcendent experience every day. It's very easy to get dragged down into the practical. You focus on doing your work, doing your school, doing your whatever, paying your bills. But there's this special category of experience for the American transcendentalist, transcendent experiences that either reveal something about ourselves or reveal something about reality, show the interconnectedness of nature, give us some sort of transcendent access to the divine, whatever it is. And again, I think that's going to mean something different for everyone. My transcendent experiences are probably different from yours, but figure out what is genuinely transcendent for you that's outside the category of normal experience, some special category of experience for you, and try to find that, every day. Again, there's just a danger of living in such an overly practical life that you don't take the time to seek out experiences that are genuinely transcendent. If you think that's an important part of living, important part of experience, you have to cultivate it and seek it out for yourself. For Thoreau, it meant building a cabin around Walden Pond and escaping society. There's a lot of different ways of being transcendent, though. We looked at some of these when we were talking about transcendentalism. For some people, it's relationships. So for some people, it's science. For some people, it's time with their friends. For some people, it's getting out in nature. Whatever it is, figure out what feels transcendent to you and spend some time doing it. Otherwise, live your whole life and not having those things. From Chalmers, really, it should be a mystery to you that you have a mind at all, right? There's something mysterious about being conscious. Be amazed that you're conscious and have a mind at all. And I say, kind of jokingly, don't be a zombie, but, really have some awe and some reverence for the fact that you have a mind and you're conscious. You have some control of your life. You've got some free will. You have the power to understand things. Don't just be a zombie, checking things off the list. Go to work today, pay the bills, have breakfast, clean up the house, do all the things you got to do. Live a more conscious, engaged life than that, because it's almost magical and mysterious that we have that ability amidst this entire world around us that's not conscious. Even compared to the animals around us that are, conscious to some lower degree, we've got amazing power to comprehend. We've got amazing control over our own lives. We have amazing creativity that we bring to the table that other species don't seem to have. And if you don't pay attention to those things, you're not going to use those things, and you'll essentially be, from my point of view, a walking zombie, not living a truly human life. So be amazed at your own mental faculties in all the ways I just mentioned, and make sure you're using them, and try to carve out some time to use them every day. From Philip Clayton, who's actually a former professor of mine, kind of my mentor. I haven't talked to him in a long time, but I still consider him a mentor. His emphasis is on emergence, as you probably saw from the readings, but consider the emerging universe unfolding around you. Again, when we look at the history of the cosmos as a whole, from my point of view, it's an ongoing story of continual novelty, of emergence of new phenomena, new entities, new qualities, new types of creativity that didn't used to exist. And we're only a blip in time. That's going to happen for billions of years after we're gone, presumably. So be amazed at the inherent unfolding creativity of the universe and the way that it functions and the things that it reveals novelly every time there's a leap of emergence or a leap of evolution or a leap of creativity or a leap in the way society functions. There's, again, that should be something magical and mystical and awe-worthy and reverence-worthy, but it's also part of who we are, right? We're a result of all of that creativity, and we're the cause of a lot of that creativity. We create technology, we create societies, we create culture, we create architecture, we create agriculture, right? We create order around us in all kinds of novel ways, inventing new things all the time. And immerse yourself in that. Find a way to get involved in the unfolding emergence of things in the universe and be the cause of some of it. Create things, write things, develop things, invent things, create things, express yourself in new ways, find new ways of building order out of the chaos that came before you. All of that, from my point of view, is the story of the unfolding emergence of the cosmos as a whole, and you can play a part in it if you view your role that way. About free will and determinism, I think this is really important. Be aware of all the external factors guiding your actions and don't be constrained by them. And I said, no excuses. It's very easy to let your life be steered by all kinds of factors outside your control. All the things that you're being told socially and culturally and ethically and politically and religiously. All the biological, factors and about your own life, the things that drive your body. And I mean, even as simple as getting something to eat, right? You're being steered, right? You're being steered biologically. You're being steered neuroscientifically, purely by the way your brain functions. You're being conditioned psychologically all the time. And if you're not aware of all these different factors that are conditioning you and steering you and controlling you and taking away your free will, you can live your entire life not having the freedom of action, not having the agency and the autonomy that you really should have as free agents in the world. And I said, no excuses. I catch myself doing it, and I see other people doing it all the time. Excuse after excuse after excuse, reasons they can't do something, reasons they can't live a certain kind of life, reasons they can't be a certain way, reasons they can't have the things they want to have or do the things they want to do. And, I think if you take that for granted as just the way things are, Sartre would say that's just an excuse. You really can do something about a lot of those things. You can decondition yourself. You can, Marcus Aurelius would say you can control your own urges. You can reject certain societal assumptions. You can just outright make a decision if you want, to do something different. You can change the course of your life tomorrow if you want. You have the power to do all of those things, but it all has to do, and it all hinges on not using those factors as excuses for not making a decision. But Sartre says we really do have the power to do that, no matter what your past is or how you've been conditioned. This is a really, really practical piece of wisdom, but learn some technology skills. We live in a technological age. It's the 21st century. So many of the good jobs out there are technology jobs, and even a little bit of technological knowledge goes a long way. Learn some web design, learn some computer programming, learn how to code, learn how to make videos, learn how to do something technological. That will give you a huge leg up in the corporate world and in your future job searches. If two candidates come to the table and one knows how to do something technologically and the other one doesn't, the person who can get stuff done technologically is probably the person to go with. But it doesn't take much to put yourself at the top of the pile. So, just spend some time developing some technology skills, because the fact that I could shift gears and teach an online class so easily, boom, there you go. That's a perfect example, right? It took some time to learn how to make videos, and took some time to learn how to use these connectivity tools and learn how to use Blackboard, and now I can run an online class, no problem, right? So I'm at the top of the pile. Someone needs a teacher who can teach online. Or in my instructional design work, same thing. But whatever it is, you'll probably find that having some technological skills will be an asset. And it really is a doorway to getting a well-paying job in this 21st century age that we live in. So take some time and learn some technology skills, non-philosophically, but very practically. Create something new. It should be inspiring, right? We can use technology. Humans are fundamentally tool makers, right? We're creative beings. We solve problems by inventing tools, and we can change the world, but it all hinges on inventing something, right? It could be something, very practical. If there's a problem in the world you want to solve, it could be some tool that makes things easier for other people. It could be artistic self-expression. We're artistic creative beings as well. Create something. But don't just get things done. Don't just write your papers and get your degree and check things off the list at your job if you're not creating something new along the way. Again, I think you're wasting some of your potential as human creative agents. So figure out what inspires you and create it, especially if it's something that doesn't yet exist, or if it's a way of saying something that hasn't been said before. I think you can see in the course of the philosophers we looked at, what makes those philosophers stand out, all of them at every turn, is that they said something new that had never been said before. They framed a philosophical issue in a way that it had never been framed before. And all of the great philosophers in the history of philosophy created something new. All of the great inventors, all of the great scientists, all of the great literary authors, all of them in the history of the world, the great figures, are the ones who did something different and created something new. They either invented something, or they said something in a new way, or they looked at it in a way that it hadn't been looked at before. And that should be, I think, a goal for yourself, but it should be a goal for your writing too. If you find yourself just kind of getting things done in your writing and you haven't said anything unique, haven't said anything new, you're not doing your job as a thinker and a writer. And there should be some novelty in the things you create, and the things you write, and the things you do. So create something new, whatever that means for you. Write poetry, even bad poetry. I've always been a poet at the same time, and I've written a lot of bad poetry, and some of it's good, but a lot of it's bad. And for me, it's an authentic form of self-expression. But I think for a lot of people, it's a form of self-expression. Probably a lot of you have written a poem or a bad poem. maybe you've written great poems, but you've probably written a lot of bad poems. It's a really great way to express yourself, and maybe an emotional outlet at the same time, like journaling. But write some poetry. I think that's time well spent. Read poetry too. This is really practical. This is advice from my grandfather and from an uncle of mine. And I used to spend some time doing personal finance writing. I host a personal finance blog. You don't realize this when you're young, and unless someone tells you, you don't do it. And by the time you're my age, you wish someone had told you when you were your age. So I'm telling you now, and you can't say no one told you. If you want to retire wealthy, if you want to be financially well off later in life, take 10% of everything you earn right now, no matter how much money you're making, and invest it in the stock market. And you'll retire a millionaire plus when you're retired. It doesn't take very much. It's the power of compounding. If you look at the mathematics of compounding, just $500 a month invested, or $1,000 a month, or even $100 a month can yield a vast amount of money over 30 or 40 or 50 years, given the growth of the stock market and given the power of reinvesting your returns on your investment. So there you go. You've been told, invest 10% of everything you make, and you'll retire wealthy someday. This is advice from my maternal grandfather, Roger Forcell. He said, always have a plan. This is great advice. If there's something you want to achieve, if there's something you need to figure out, if there's a problem you need to get out of, whatever it is, have a plan. Don't just let your life, go through life willy-nilly. Figure out where you want to be, and then sit down and make a plan. It really is a matter of breaking it down into steps. Okay, if I want to have this kind of career, I need to have this kind of degree. And if I want to have this kind of degree, I need to take these kinds of classes. And if I want to achieve anything in life, whatever it is, you can probably break it down into steps and make a plan for yourself. And it really is that simple. That's why I sort of question whether, college counselors are really that necessary, right? Just all you need to know is what classes to take to get your degree, and you need to know what degree to get the kind of job you want to have. But all of life is like this. Anything you want to achieve, you can break it down into a series of steps and make a plan for yourself and do those things, and you can get there. But it all hinges on having a plan. And if you don't do that, you'll never take those steps, and you won't achieve the things you want to achieve. So use your power to be a plan maker. More advice from my grandfather. So a quick story time. My grandfather was a B-24 pilot in World War II. He was a squadron leader in the 380th bomb group, Squadron 531 in the South Pacific. And his name was Roger Forcell, and he was known as three-engine Forcell. And the reason is that these planes had turbochargers. What would happen is that these were like flying tin cans, big aluminum hunks of metal. You've seen, bombers from World War II. So B-24 is this big aluminum plane. And they would overload the plane, like load it to capacity with bombs because they were going to go bomb something. And what would happen is they would load the plane so much that a lot of these planes would not get off the ground. They would crash on takeoff because they were so overloaded they couldn't get off the ground. So you weren't supposed to use these turbochargers on takeoff because you would burn out an engine. But my grandfather said, I'll be damned if I'm going to die in a plane crash taking off. If they shoot me down, that's one thing. But if I'm not going to crash on takeoff. So he would use the turbochargers to get the plane off the ground, burning out an engine in the process, and he would get off the ground and he would fly his mission on three engines instead of 4 engines. And he became known as three-engine Forcell because he would burn out an engine almost every time on takeoff. But he did not crash on takeoff, and he actually got off the ground. So this is a metaphor, right? Use the turbochargers to get off the ground. If you really want to achieve something, throw yourself into it. Don't just kind of, dabble in it. Don't just say, oh, I'm going to take these baby steps to get there. If you want to get a college degree, throw yourself into it. Take all the classes you can take, write your papers, do your things, throw yourself into it. Early on in the journey, push yourself forward, because those are the things that will get you over that initial hump and get you, on the path to doing the thing you want to do. If you want to start a business, don't just talk about it. Oh, I'm going to sit here and make a business plan. I'm going to start a business. Throw yourself into it. Right? Whatever it is, spend time, spend the energy, the blood, sweat, and tears that it takes to make something happen. Do that early and do it quickly to get it out of the way so you can get momentum, so you can get off the ground and actually see it come to fruition. So I think it's a really fruitful metaphor. Of course, it was literal for my grandfather, but for me, it's more metaphorical. Use those turbochargers, go full speed ahead to get off the ground, whatever your decision is, whatever your path in life is, whatever goals you have, whatever things you want to build or create or achieve. Push at it with all of your might, and that's what will get you off the ground. The people that are truly successful in life are the people that have become like almost single-minded about achieving a particular goal. Could be the research they're doing, could be the invention they've got, could be the app they want to make, could be the company they want to start, whatever it is, the PhD they want to have someday. If you don't push yourself with all your might, you run the risk of not getting there and crashing on takeoff, metaphorically. Even more advice from my grandfather. Don't burn the candle at both ends. Really, you only have so many hours in the day and so many things you can focus on. If you let your energy be bifurcated, taken up by too many things, you're not going to do any one of those things well, and you'll burn yourself out. So choose how you spend your energy and then make whatever trade-offs are necessary to live your best possible life. If you find your energy being pulled in too many different directions, it's probably time to cut something out and make a hard decision about what you really want to focus on, and don't burn the candle at both ends. It's my favorite phrase of my grandfather's, and it's still good advice today. My advice is improve your writing. Your writing is your public face, right? Every email you write, every job application you fill out, every response to your future clients, whatever business you find yourself in, a lot of that is going to be in written form. And of course, there's other forms of writing, blog posts and articles and books and the things you want to write professionally, maybe. But one of the best things you can do, again, to put yourself at the top of any pile you're in, is to improve your writing. Your good writing will make you stand out compared to everyone who has not taken the time to cultivate good writing. And by good writing, I mean a number of things. Yes, grammar and spelling, but yes, sentence structure and paragraph structure and all the things that go into the mechanics of writing. But be a good, inspiring writer, right? Don't just summarize. Be inspiring, right? Be a good writer. Think about the writers that you really admire and what makes their writing awesome, and try to be like that. And then find your own voice, of course. But over the course of your entire life, I don't think you guys realize yet the importance of writing for all the things you're going to end up doing, no matter what you're going to end up doing. So really focus on improving your writing. Don't take the world around you for granted. The world doesn't have to be the way it is today. I kind of said this already, but so much of the world around us has been handed to us, right? It was invented by other people. The values we have were decided by other people. The worldview we have was invented by other people. All the ways of living that we have, technologically or structurally or socially or otherwise, were all invented at a certain point. And it doesn't have to be that way. It's all malleable and changeable and moldable. And when you realize that you have the power to kind of poke at reality and something else will pop out the other side, that reality is shapeable and moldable, that changes your entire life, because you realize that it really is all under your control. If you don't like the way the world is, you can change it. If you don't like the way your life is, you can change it. If you see a need somewhere that hasn't been invented yet, you can invent it. You've got the power to do those things. But if you take the world too much for granted as just being the way it is by necessity, you're going to forget that you have the power to change it and control it and make the world a better place. So, make the world a better place. Don't take it for granted that it has to be the way it is today. Create and leave a legacy for yourself and for future generations. I feel like I was really fortunate. I inherited a rich legacy from family members that came before me. I've always been interested in ancestry and genealogy. I've always been interested in history, ancient history in particular. Look at all the things that had to happen intellectually and culturally and socially and biologically and evolutionarily and with your families to be here today, right? It's a huge, amazing, inspiring legacy that came before us. It all culminates in us. This is our moment in the sun. And I really think it's our responsibility to leave a legacy for future generations. Build something that they're going to enjoy. Create and pass on the values that you receive that you think should be passed on. Change the values that you think shouldn't be passed on. Pass on better values to the people that come after us. And narrowly about philosophy, since this is a philosophy class, there's this huge intellectual legacy that's produced the modern era that we live in now, right? Everything from ancient philosophy to the Enlightenment to this, scientific revolution to all the technology of the 20th century and all the, social criticism that came along with it in the late 20th century. That's a legacy, right? And it's our responsibility to keep that story moving forward, in terms of history, but in terms of the intellectual progress of mankind. Push that forward, but it's our moment in the sun. We have to do that for future generations. And also, I do think of this in terms of ancestry and genealogy, right? Pass on the things that you've inherited from the people before you to the next generation, right? Leave a legacy for them and don't just pass on the legacy, but create a legacy and pass on that legacy to future generations. I feel like I'm doing that with you guys, as a teacher, and we do it in our families and whatnot. But I think that's an important part of the progress of humanity across generations. This is a almost silly one, but I'm doing it right now. There's birds out the window. Feed the birds. It's good for them and good for your soul. There is a huge problem with the bird population declining. Actually, the bird population has declined in the entire world has declined like 25% in the last 40 years. So that means their habitat is getting destroyed, and they're declining. So feed the birds, give them some sustenance, and it's transcendent, right? And this has to do with Thoreau and transcendence. That little kind of experience, watching the birds feed at my bird feeder, is a kind of transcendent experience. So it's good for your soul, and it's really good for them. So highly practical, almost comical, but very important ecologically nonetheless. I really believe this one: don't live somebody else's life. If you find your life being shaped by other people, by your family or by your religion or by your society, by your political party, by your friends, through social media, whatever it is, just don't live somebody else's life. Live your life. Decide how you want life to be authentically for you and live that life. And I think we all encounter this sometimes. We find that our life has been shaped by other people, and we have to break free of that in some way. So live your own life. You really can't, especially in this social media age, we really are in danger of having our lives be shaped by other people in ways we don't fully understand. Honor the past, but look to the future. And don't forget about the people that came before you and the legacy that came before you, but don't be constrained by that. Really see possibilities in the future. And I'm kind of a futurist. I'm a science fiction fan. I'm a Star Trek fan. I think, I don't view myself as the culmination of world history. I view myself as the beginning of the future, right? And I think if you view yourself that way, that forward looking rather than backward looking, but not forgetting the important lessons of the past, then you're doing your part for the progress of mankind. But if you're not looking to the future, if you're looking too much to the present, the immediate concerns of today, or you're stuck by the past, always looking to the past but not looking to the future, you're not doing your part to push humanity forward. So keep your eyes set on the future, but don't forget about the past at the same time. I don't know if I mentioned this. Maybe I failed as a philosophy teacher by not mentioning it, but we kind of talked about the origin of philosophy with Socrates, but Thales was known as the first philosopher, even by Socrates. And he was known for having fallen into a well. He was looking up at the stars, trying to understand the heavens, and he wasn't paying attention to, the ground in front of him, and he literally fell into a well. So what's the lesson there? Look up to the stars and dream. I mean, literally, yes, look to the stars. I'm something of a science fiction fan. So, maybe in a couple thousand years, we'll be out amongst the stars like you see in Star Trek or Star Wars or whatnot. But also this could be metaphorical, like dream of possibility, see the future, try to comprehend the cosmos, solve the philosophical and intellectual problems that need solving, or practical problems even. But don't lose sight of where you are. Don't be so in your head about those things that you forget about the immediate needs in front of you as well. Don't fall into a well, in other words. So yes, look up to the stars and dream, literally and metaphorically, but also be practical and keep your feet on the ground. Like I said, I'm interested in ancestry and genealogy. I care a lot about this. Don't let history forget the people that have meant the most to you. I've been fortunate to have incredible influences in my life. Grandparents and aunts and uncles, and even generations back, stories that have been handed down about ancestors, teachers that have made an influence on my life, family members and friends, and all the things that go into shaping a person's life. Don't let history forget about those, right? Like Marcus Aurelius and his meditations, the whole first book of the meditations, if you remember, was Marcus Aurelius thanking all of the people that gave him some wisdom, that from whom he learned something, that were influences in his life. And I think that's part of I would say intellectual honesty as well. It's part of recognizing all these influences that shape who you are, for better or worse, hopefully for better. But don't let history forget about the good lessons that you've learned and the people you learned them from, the stories and the values and the relationships that shape who you are, that you find important. Tell those stories to future generations. Don't let history forget about those things. Otherwise, they'll just have to be rediscovered all over again. And, the people that have meant something to you will be lost to history and lost to time unless you tell the stories. So be storytellers and pass those things down. This is really important if you're going on in your education, if you're going to college or going to grad school, or if you're going to become a professional academic or be a researcher in any field. It's important to realize that every academic discipline is incomplete, with more to learn, more to create, and more still to discover. I think we forget about this sometimes, that we kind of view education as learning things we've already learned. At a certain point, if you continue on with your education, you realize that what makes you a professional academic or a professional researcher or professional thinker is that there's more unknown stuff than there's stuff that's known. All the things that are interesting about a particular discipline are the things yet to learn, yet to be created, yet to be discovered, the problems yet to be solved. And that's where the real action is within any particular discipline. If you're going to become a scientist, be on the cutting edge, right? What are the things yet to be discovered? What are the things that are still unknown about how the world works? If you're a philosopher, what are the hot open-ended questions in philosophy that are still to be discovered? If you're going to be an author, what's the cutting edge of literature that's yet to be created, yet to be written? That's the exciting stuff in every discipline. Yes, there's all this stuff you have to learn about what came before and what we have learned, but to be on the cutting edge is to focus on the things yet to be discovered and yet to be created. And at a certain point, you'll make this transition where, yes, you'll learn all the things you have to learn, but you'll get excited, hopefully, about something yet to come, some problem yet to be solved, or something yet to be invented or created, the cutting edge of your discipline. And that's where the real action is, and that's where you probably want to be. Be a generalist. Don't over-specialize. I've been really fortunate in my career. I'm really adaptable in a way. I learn quickly. I take on new skills. I'm interested in everything. And that's allowed me to go from, teaching philosophy to dabbling in instructional design, to writing content, to doing sales, to do all the different things I've done in my career at this point in my career. But it all has to do with being a generalist, being malleable and flexible. Some people tend to over-specialize and they pigeonhole themselves. They might be really successful in that one area, but the second the world changes, they can't can't adapt. So be a generalist. And even though you do have to specialize in something, that's what it means to, advance in your education, to move on to grad school and become a professional in a certain field. You have to specialize to do that, but try to avoid over specializing. Still try to be a generalist. Be interested in everything, learn new skills across the board, be willing to change the path of your life, to go with the flow. Like, a lot of people are getting laid off like me. And as a result of this coronavirus pandemic, I'm going to have to reinvent myself. I've had to do it before. I'll have to do it again. And so will you. And if you over specialize, you won't be as malleable as you can be. Okay, I've got a few more to go, and I'm going to go through these really quickly. I'd like to spend more time on them, but I don't want to keep you longer than I have to. Forgive, but don't forget. I've been burned a few times in life. You probably have too. Forgive people that have harmed you or done you wrong, but don't forget the lessons you've learned from them. Don't be afraid to ask for help. This is really important. Experts love to help, and they are waiting to hear from you. People who are experts in a domain, people who are business leaders or professional leaders or academics, people who've walked the path you want to walk, they are waiting to hear from you, and the vast majority of them love to help. If you reach out to those people and say, hey, can you give me some advice? Can you steer me the right direction? Can you, help me learn some new skills? Those people are dying to hear from you. They want to help, but most people are afraid to reach out to them. And if you get the courage to reach out to those people can really help you in life, and most of them want to hear from you. Break the rules. Just ignore standards you don't agree with. I do this all the time. If I don't like a rule, I just ignore it. If I don't like the way I'm being told to do things, I just bend the rules, break the rules, do something different, do it my own way. Circumvent the rules if you have to. Don't be too constrained by the way other people say you need to be doing things. Don't be afraid to break the rules. Don't settle for mere knowledge, right? Anyone can learn stuff out of a book, but not everyone can be wise. And I think this is the core of philosophy, right? We don't just want knowledge, we want wisdom. That's what philosophy means, a love of wisdom. So don't just learn things, be a wise human being. Learn the practical and moral lessons from them as well. The moral of the story, in other words, and then try to live your best possible life. Don't just settle for being smart and knowing things. Be a wise human being. This is really true in the business world. Tenacity and focus matter a lot more than skill, but keep improving your skills, right? You do need actual skills to get hired and to get jobs and to achieve things and do things and build things. But what matters a lot more is tenacity and focus. Like Edison inventing the light bulb, failing again and again and again until he found a formula that actually worked for the filament in a light bulb, right? That single-minded tenacity and focus will matter a lot more for getting things done and your success than any of the actual skills you pick up along the way. So focus on developing your tenacity and stick-with-itness. Be a lifelong student. You should always be learning. I'm 42 years old and I'm still learning along the way. There's lots of things I'm learning and teaching myself even today on my own. Whether or not you go to college, whether or not you're still in school, whether you've got a career at that point, keep learning and keep developing yourself on your own, driven from you. And also pass down what you've learned. Once you've become an expert in something, again, either in a particular area or in terms of wisdom, teach and mentor others, pass down the things you've learned. Have strong ideals, but don't be an idealist. Bring your ideals into reality. It's great to have ideas and concepts and dreams and hopes and, vision of what you want the world to be. But unless you're working to bring it into reality, it's all a pipe dream, right? So really work to bring your ideals and your vision into reality. And that takes the tenacity and stick-with-itness and the motivation that I've been talking about. Be kind. The world needs it. It's a harsh world out there. I think it's overly harsh. It doesn't need to be as harsh and unforgiving as it is, but it is, sadly. Be a force for kindness and goodness and gentleness in the world. The world really does need a kinder, gentler perspective than has emerged in the last 20 or 30 years. You see it politically, you see it socially. Be a kind person. But don't be a pushover. Don't be a doormat. It's so easy to be walked on and trodden upon, to be taken advantage of. Don't be a doormat and don't be a pushover, whatever that means to you. Some practical advice from Sun Tzu, who we didn't look at in the class. Keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. Really good advice. I have a lot of enemies. So do you. I have a lot of friends. So do you. But I think what is not always evident is the way in which other people plot against you without you even realizing it. So, if you suspect someone's plotting against you, keep your enemies close, and you'll have the tactical advantage over them if you do that. Be comfortable with being alone, in these social media times. I think we're seeing this now with the coronavirus pandemic. A lot of people just aren't comfortable being by themselves, right? It's creating some anxiety, just not being part of the social world. Be comfortable with your own mind, your own thoughts. Be comfortable, being introspective. Get to know yourself, right? And a lot of people never take the time to do that because we're getting this constant stream of social media. But also be comfortable being with others. Don't be such an isolationist. Don't be so shy. Don't be so afraid. Don't hesitate to put yourself out there. Be comfortable being out in the world, being social, getting to know people, being with others, being in the world, being with others, as Heidegger would say, right? That's part of human life just as much as being by yourself. So be comfortable being by yourself, get to know yourself, be comfortable being introspective, but learn to be social. And this takes cultivating some values. Say hello, say hi, say good morning, ask how people are doing. Put yourself out in the world, talk to people when you go to a coffee shop. Don't just sit there and sip your coffee and be afraid to talk to people. Be comfortable with others. That will serve you really well in life as well. Some time ago, we went to Fanex, and John Rhys Davies was there, the actor that played Gimli in Lord of the Rings, and he gave some really good advice. Make others feel comfortable. If you make other people feel comfortable, they like you, and they'll help you be successful. And this could be as simple as saying good morning to people, right? How many people fail to do that? It's something I try to do with you guys. I always try to say good morning, ask how you guys are doing, and I hope and make you guys feel comfortable being in class and make a good environment together. If you make other people feel comfortable, those people will be on your side. They'll become your friends, and they will help you be successful. Read to learn something new. I'm going to go over a little bit here. If you need to drop off, that's absolutely fine, but I'm going to keep going for a few more slides because I have a few more and I'm going a little slower than I thought I would here. Feel free to stay on. I hope you do. If this is goodbye, if you want to take off and finish work on your paper, make sure you get your final papers to me by the end of the day. I won't be accepting any late work after midnight tonight. So get all your work to me, but I'm going to keep going here. So if you want to stick on for a few minutes, please do. But if you need to drop off, feel free to. Read to learn something new. I'm a reader. I always have been. Although I did take a dip in my reading as a result of my professional life. I was reading for work so much, I really didn't feel like reading at all in my time off. And now I'm at a point in life where I'm rediscovering reading and teaching myself new things, reading things I wouldn't have read otherwise, things I didn't used to be interested in. Always be reading, always be learning. And reading is one of the best ways to do that, right? You can always go to the library, you can download a Kindle book, you can go buy a book, you can jump on Wikipedia, you can learn anything you want to learn. There has never been a time in the whole history of the planet when it's been easier to learn something than it is right now. If you want to learn anything, it's a Google search away. And then you can take the time to develop those skills. You can connect with people who can help you be better at those things. And it all hinges with being able to read and learn. I'm also kind of disappointed professionally. I see people that are not able to learn new skills. Like you hand them a manual, like here's how you do the thing. Here are the steps involved in doing something. And they can't do it. They can't follow the steps. Read to learn, hone your ability to learn quickly from reading. If you do that, that will serve you really well. And you'll find you can pick up new skills really easily. And you'll be malleable because you'll be able to learn the things you need to learn to change directions in life if you need to. But always be reading. And that means also being curious about things. Be curious about everything. I think that's the thing that it's hard to, I wish other people had this more, and it's always a little disappointing when they don't, but I've always been curious about everything. It's a really interesting world. I'm interested in physics and biology and chemistry and astronomy and cosmology and philosophy and psychology. You have to be interested in all these things because they're interwoven together, right? So if you're not curious about those things, you're really going to hold yourself back intellectually. Just have some innate curiosity about the world and then be open to learning about those things and really, follow where your intellect leads you, but being open to reading and learning something new. This is almost comical, but be a romantic, and I don't mean this like purely romantically, but I mean this like in the sense of romanticism. Look at the trajectory of world history. Look at the intellectual history of philosophy. Look at the romance of all the projects you're going to throw yourself into, the things you want to achieve, the things you want to build, the legacy you want to leave behind. There's a romantic quality to all of those things, these overarching story arcs that give all of those things meaning. So be romantic about all the things things you do. Find the drama in those things. Find the story, find the narrative, and let yourself be inspired by those things. I think that's part of being genuinely inspired as a human being. Take your life into your own hands once in a while. It's so easy to play it safe and not take any chances. I'm proud of the fact that I've done things like hiking up the tallest mountains and looking over the cliffs, and, done some cliff diving and things that are really dangerous, right? Could have been hurt, could have been killed. And it is powerful to, stare your mortality in the face and realize, I'm not going to let this fear hold me back from doing the things I want to do, and some of it's foolish, really. Like if you're skydiving, it's like, is that the best way to take life into your own hands? I don't know. But I think it's powerful and inspiring to be responsible for your own life in some way that might look foolish to other people, but can be really inspiring if you take the time to do it. Hike up the tallest mountains, literally. I think, we, like Nietzsche said, it's too easy to lay in the lowlands of life and play it safe. Set your sights on the mountains and go hike up those. That could be literal, if you're a hiker. For me, it's literal. I like standing on the top of a tall mountain. It's also metaphorical. Set your sights on something that's genuinely challenging for you. Some goal, some dream, something you want to accomplish, and set your sight on that and put one foot in front of the other and get going on it. Just like my grandfather said, use the turbochargers to get off the ground. But, don't just settle for the lowlands of life, literally or metaphorically. Set your sights on something amazing and then take whatever steps are necessary to get there. Learn Latin and Greek, and I've learned to be a good writer, and I've learned much more about grammar than I ever would have learned had I not learned Latin as well as I did and taken some Greek along the way too. And I think I've learned so much from ancient authors who had just as much, maybe a better sense of human life than we do. Ancient authors really understood human nature in ways that sometimes I suspect we modern humans don't. And you can access those things by reading them in Latin and Greek. And I encourage you to do that. Take Latin, take Latin for a year when you go to college. It'll be time well spent. You will become a better writer and a better reader, and you'll understand language and you'll understand human nature a lot better than if you don't do those things. Along with that, read Homer to understand human nature. I didn't used to find this kind of stuff interesting, reading the Iliad or reading the Odyssey. But I think that those ancient epic works, Iliad, the Odyssey, I might even count Dante's Inferno or the Divine Comedy in there as well. Those authors understood so much about the ups and downs and struggles and obstacles and the things that are inspiring about human nature, and we forgot about the epic quality of human life sometimes. So read Homer, read the Odyssey. If you really want to understand people, don't study psychology. Read Homer, read the Odyssey. You'll understand people a lot more than than anything science can tell you about human nature. That's my take on it. I'm a huge Anne of Green Gables fan. I always have been. So here's a little piece of advice from the author of Anne of Green Gables, L.M. Montgomery, Lucy Maud Montgomery. Tomorrow is always fresh with no mistakes in it yet. You can, we always make mistakes. I make some every day. I've made big ones in life. You probably have too, big ones and small ones. Every day is a new day and you haven't made any mistakes in it. You probably will. You'll probably make some mistakes tomorrow, big ones, small ones, whatever. But every day is a new opportunity. You haven't made any mistakes yet. Don't be too worried by the mistakes you've made in the past. Just keep looking forward, and every day is a new ball game, so to speak. Don't settle for being second best. I think I mean two things by this. Keep challenging yourself. Keep striving to be the best. You may not be. Not everyone can be the best, right? But if you're not striving to be the best, you're not really pushing yourself. Also, don't settle for second best in life. All of you, myself, you guys, everyone deserves to live the best possible life. To have all the opportunities, to have all the happiness and all the richness that life can give you. If you find yourself settling, don't do that. You have to be aware of those things. Just don't settle for living a life that's not up to what it should be. Everyone deserves the best possible life. That's my take on it. And you have to build it for yourself, and you have to choose to live it. Change. Don't be afraid to change. Don't get stuck in your ways. I find we're all in danger of this, especially as we age, right? I mean, I'm halfway through the journey, so I've seen people who are older than me. They're so stuck in their ways. They're not malleable. They don't change. They get rigid, they get inflexible. Be willing to change yourself, reinvent yourself, to change your values, change your assumptions, change your worldview, change your career. Don't get stuck in your ways. Even though life is kind of short, we only get 100 years or so, give or take, usually less, right? 80 years or so. It's very easy to get stuck and not use those 80 years that we've got to wisely, to experience different things and different ways of living, and changing your life, changing your direction, using your free will to do something different than you were doing last year. Don't get stuck in your ways. I've seen so many people doing it, and it's so sad because I feel like they're wasting their lives away, and it'll probably be too late. They'll waste their entire lives away, never having changed very much. I'm proud of the fact that I've had to reinvent myself. I'm totally different than I was at age 20, even despite the core of me that's still the same. But don't get too stuck in your ways. This is a piece of advice from the very first episode of Star Trek, the unaired pilot episode. And I want you to think about this. I won't explain the full setting, but this quote is from that episode called The Cage. Doctors and bartenders both get the same two customers, the living and the dying. Yes, literally, you're either living or dying, right? You're thriving and you're living, or you already have one foot in the grave. But there's a metaphorical way of reading this quote, like, the bartender approach to reading this quote. Some people are really living their lives. They've got a plan, they've got a goal, they're pushing themselves, they're challenging themselves, they're focusing on building the kind of life they want to have. They are really living their lives, right? And other people are essentially dying. They're unhappy, or they've put themselves out to pasture, or they're always focusing on the negative, or they don't see any possibilities. You kind of hear the difference in tone there, right? You can live your entire life with one foot already in the grave, not really living your life. And, living means being on the frontier of life. This is kind of the Star Trek metaphor, right? Being out there on the final frontier, not literally out in space, but on the frontier of life, pushing your life forward. Seeking out the novelty, seeking out happiness, challenging yourself, accomplishing things, whatever. And that's going to mean something different to all of you. But if you're not on the frontier of life, you probably already have one foot in the grave, and you don't even realize it. So be part of the living. Don't be part of the dying. Even if you're close to dying, like, if you find out you have cancer and you've got a month to live, you can be on the frontier of life. You can live life to its fullest in that month, or you can be dying, one foot already in the grave with a month to go. And you can choose, are you going to be part of the living, or are you going to be part of the dying, even when you're close to death, I think. This is kind of a 20th century existentialist, James Dean, Jack Kerouac kind of vision. But take a train, go on a journey, find yourself, go travel, jump on a train, get in the car, go somewhere, travel, move to another country, study at a university in Europe, whatever it is. Go join the Peace Corps, go on a journey, get out of Idaho Falls and go do something in the world. You probably know people like this. They're townies, right? They stay in their hometown, they stay in their comfort zone, they never go anywhere, and they probably never really discover themselves. I've taken a few big journeys in life. Like when I first left to grad school, I took a train to Syracuse University from California, took a train across the country. I've gone on hiking journeys and camping journeys and road trips and traveled. And, you've got to do those things, because for me, that's part of really finding yourself. Those moments, being alone, traveling, or traveling with your close friends, whatever it is, those are moments where you really connect with yourself and connect with the world around you. You discover who you really are and what you really want in doing that. So if you find yourself tempted to just kind of stay put, stay in your hometown, go to a local college, go to a local university, get a local job, have a local family, and live your entire life where you're from, you probably need to step outside your comfort zone and go on a journey. So I encourage you to do that. If that, literally, don't misread me. I'm not saying don't go to college, but if that means taking a year off to go travel before you go to college, do it. If that means going to a college on the different side, on the other side of the country, or in an area you hadn't considered. If you're from the country, go to a urban university in the city. Go to a different environment. You'll discover who you really are if you take the time to do that. But you have to get outside your comfort zone to do it. This has been really important to me in the business world. It's important for you as students as well. Follow through on things, meet your commitments, do the things you say you're going to do. If you tell your instructor, I'm going to have that thing to you by Sunday, get that thing to your instructor by Sunday. If you tell your boss, I'm going to have this project done by Friday, have the thing done by Friday. If you tell someone you're going to send them an email, send them an email. Whatever you say you're going to do, follow through, because that gives you credibility, shows you're a reliable person. People can depend on you. And that's the kind of person they want to be around in the business world and in education and whatnot. So if you get a reputation for following through on your commitments, people will have immense respect for you, almost no matter how good you actually are at things, right? Merely meeting your commitments shows a lot about your integrity, and you're the kind of person someone's going to want to work with and hire, no matter how good you are at the actual things. So follow through, meet your commitments, and do the things you say you're going to do. Be reliable, in other words. And I really mean this. Surpass your teachers and do more amazing things in life than they have done. Every generation should look at everyone who came before them and say, I'm going to do even more amazing things than everyone who came before me. You should do better than your parents. You should do better than your teachers. You should do better than all the great politicians of the past. You should do more awesome things than all the scientists of the past. You should live life in ways those people were not able to. And again, there's never been a time in the whole history of the planet when it's been easier to do those kinds of things, despite all the social and cultural constraints that I really lament a lot of the time. But challenge yourself. Maybe you think I'm a great teacher. Maybe you don't think I'm a great teacher. I hope you think I'm a good teacher, but I want you to look at me and go, I want to be an even more awesome thinker than that guy. I want to achieve more than that guy. Anyone you respect, anyone you look up to, yes, you should look up to them. Yes, respect them. Yes, thank them for being a good influence, but also challenge yourself. I'm going to do better than they did. And that's what it means to move humanity forward. If those key people in the history of the world, in the history of philosophy, in the history of science, in the history of literature, didn't look at everything that came before them and say, I'm going to do better than that. I'm going to do something new and better, humanity would be stuck, right? This is an inherent part of moving humanity forward, is looking at the past and saying, we can do better than the past. And if you're not challenging yourself to do that, then you're more constrained by the past, right? You're not really living up to your full potential. So challenge yourself to really surpass everyone who came before you. Last slide, keep in touch. I'm easy to get a hold of. There's my email address. I've got a website. You can find me on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn. I'm super easy to get a hold of. There's my phone number, even whatever. So I really hope to hear from all of you guys down the road. And I mean this literally. I think of myself as a mentor to you guys. Yes, we have our class time together and I pass on pieces of wisdom and I teach you about philosophy and I kind of give my take on what I think life can be like or should be like. But, if you have any questions about how to achieve something, like last semester I had a student come to me asking for some advice on where to go to college, and I'm happy to give real practical advice, but I want to hear from you guys. I'm a person, you guys are people. I hope you achieve great things, but if you ever find yourself being stuck, let me know. And if you ever need, someone to listen or someone to, help point you the right direction, like, just as an anecdote, when I went to grad school, I was really unhappy. I moved to Syracuse University. I really had no sense of what graduate school was going to be like. And I found I just kind of went to the wrong kind of graduate school. I went to a school that wasn't really in line with what I wanted to do. And I remember I called Philip Clayton, the professor whose work you read when we were talking about emergence. I called him up on the phone and said, something's wrong here. Like it's like they're speaking Greek. I feel totally unprepared for what's going on here at grad school. They're not really talking about the things I'm interested in. And he gave me some of the best advice I ever received, which was go to a different grad school, reapply and go somewhere else. If that's not really resonating with you, do something else. But it all hinged on me calling up an old professor and saying, I'm really having trouble seeing how I'm going to get where I want to be given where I'm at. So I'm happy to give you guys advice, now or later in life. I'd love to hear about all the things you're interested in, all the things you're doing, and all the things you achieve. Keep in touch. I'm not a stranger. I'm super easy to get a hold of. And I really am on your side. And I think we don't hear this from our teachers enough. I am on your side. I want all of you guys to be successful and achieve things and accomplish amazing things and live an awesome life. If there's anything at all that I can do to help you get there, if you need a letter of recommendation, if you need, an ear, if you need a piece of advice, whatever it is, if you want someone to cheer for you when you achieve something great, let me know. And I'm in your corner now and down the road. So I'm super easy to get a hold of. Don't ever be afraid to reach out to me. You can, I'm a Google search away now or down the road. So that's all I've got for you guys. Keep in touch, and definitely get your final papers to me if you haven't submitted your final paper yet. Again, just as a reminder, I won't be accepting any late work after midnight tonight. That's like the hardcore cutoff date. I'm going to calculate the grade the papers, calculate the grades, get everything in the grade book, and then submit the final grades by Monday. So make sure you get everything to me by the end of the day. Other than that, again, I said this at the beginning of class, but I really mean this. Thank you guys so much for being here, for being invested, for doing the reading, putting in the work, writing your papers, for rolling with the punches of having to reconfigure how the entire class is done. We lost a lot of people along the way who didn't want to make the change, but you guys stuck it out. And really sticking it out is the thing that will get you ahead, right? If you want to get a degree, you've got to check those classes off the list and get them done. If you fail a class, you show up, you take it again the next time until you check it off the list and get it done and keep moving forward. That's all part of having a plan to get where you want to be, and the tenacity of sticking with it. Like all of you guys, I'm preaching to the choir here because all you guys have already done this, but that is what will get you ahead in life. Just keep showing up, keep taking those classes, get your degrees, get out there in the world, accomplish the things you want to accomplish, but it all starts with showing up, and you guys have done that. And just thank you for having a good class environment. This has been a truly memorable semester because of the coronavirus, but because of the environment we had together as a class, and I will never forget this semester. So don't be afraid to reach out to me at any point in the future. I hope you guys have amazing lives from here on out. That's all I've got for you guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks. You guys have a good rest of your day.
You too. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.